Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to Stay Interviews, a powerful low-cost engagement and retention tool. And I'm going to start with a quote from a recent article from the Harvard Business Review titled, "How to Keep Top Talent." And it starts out by saying, practically every company these days has some form of program designed to nurture its rising stars, with a good reason. These high-achieving individuals can have an enormous impact on business results. And the article continues to state that, unfortunately, many companies are getting failing grades despite the prevalence of these kinds of programs. Most haven't delivered the results wanted, and the reason is because they say you can't assume your people are engaged. This is the statistics from the Harvard Business Review. First, 1 in 3 or 33% or more high potential employees admit to not putting in all their efforts into their job. They're there, they do it, but they are not fully engaged in it. Also, another statistic, 1 in 4, 25%, believes that they'll be working for another employer in a year. That means that 25% of your people may no longer be there with you a year from now. And then the last statistic is that 1 in 5 believe that their personal aspirations are quite different from what the organization has planned for them. That's 20% who are not very satisfied by it. So the question is, the idea is that that's bad news. If your competitiveness relies on the drive, creative energy of your top talent. And so then the issue becomes, how do you know who your top talent is? And do you know who your talents are? Do you as leaders really know also what your team members or the people that you supervise are thinking? And so, for example, in this graphic, there are 5 people that are shown, and each have a little different, they're wondering about different things. Let's start with Joe. And Joe may be asking, how do I move up in this job? How do I get, how do I advance? Or it could be Mary, and Mary might be saying, could those rumors be true? I wish we had all the information. Now, for Mary, it could be uncertainty. Am I going to have a job? I'm not going to have a job. If a recruiter calls me or headhunter calls me, maybe I'll take that call. Or number 3, it could be Carl. Carl may say, when am I going to get recognized in front of the team? Now, recognition, you think may not be a big thing for you, but it could be for Carl, and I'm going to be talking more about recognition. Or it could be Sally. Sally may be saying, I need more variety, or I'll have to start looking around. And Jose is also saying, I wish I felt more challenged. Both Sally and Jose are feeling that they're not getting that kind of satisfaction that they really want in their job, and that can affect their engagement. So the point is you need to identify and pay attention to your talent, especially your young professionals who have increased expectations. They want more opportunity today, and they really do want to make a major contribution, and they're not going to wait 5 or 10 years to do that. So then the question is, how do you know what your people are thinking? And I'm saying just ask them. And there are 3 ways to learn about your employees' expectation, experience, and engagement. I call this the 3 E's: their expectation, their experience, their engagement. So the first is, of the 3, is using engagement surveys. And I'm realizing that most companies, probably yours, are using some kind of survey to assess your employees' either engagement or satisfaction or happiness, whatever you want to call it. But let me tell you what you have to be cautious about. Gallup annually analyzes workforce engagement, and what they found is the past 10 years, the needle has not moved. In other words, only 30% over the past 10 years of employees are fully engaged, and the rest are not engaged or disengaged. And they also found that a company's yearly engagement surveys don't have a significant impact. In other words, it hasn't moved the needle. And the problem with engagement surveys is the information tends to be too general, too late, and it's not acted on in a timely manner, and therefore it has a less impact. So that's the first way. Survey your employees. The second is to do exit interviews, and this is a staple of human resources. But the problem is that it's reactive. The decision has already been made by the employee to leave. And if you ask the employee why, they probably will give more of a general reason, not the real reason why they're leaving. Also, they're more focused on the new job, not on the old job. They have no skin in the game to tell you how to improve it and make it better. So as one manager said to me, when an employee left and the manager said, I didn't know that employee was unhappy. It came as a total surprise when that employee gave them notice that they're leaving. And the manager said, why didn't they tell me they were unhappy? And my response to the manager was, why didn't you ask? It's too late when they give you their notice. You have to be finding out on a regular basis, especially with your top talent, how they're doing, what are their expectations, what is their experience, and how engaged they are. So a key question is, why wait for your talent to leave before you know what they want and what it will take to make them stay? And therefore, I'm going to now focus on stay interviews, which is what this whole webinar is about. And a stay interview is a conversation with a valued employee about the 3 E's, their expectation, their experience, and how engaged they are both in the job and in the company. And the goal is to increase, with the knowledge you get from stay interviews, the goal is to increase stay factors, the motivators, the retention drivers, and to decrease the leave factors, the demotivators, the turnover drivers. So let's now move to a definition of what a stay interview is. And there are four ideas that I want to get across. The first is that it's a periodic one-on-one discussion between the manager and a valued employee. And what I mean by periodic, it's not just you check it off the list, you've done it once a year, or you've talked briefly, but it should be more regularly that you engage the employee to, first of all, to identify and reinforce the factors driving an employee's engagement, and second, to identify and minimize any triggers that might cause them to leave. In other words, you're trying to find out what the turn-ons are and what the turn-offs for this employee. And finally, the key is that it sends a message to the employee that we appreciate you, we're interested in you, you're just not a cog in the wheel. Now, I will say this, it's important that if you're going to bring stay interviews into your organization, that you have a culture that encourages open communication and employee involvement. You have to have that in place so that it seems fairly natural to a manager and a key employee to have this kind of discussion. So, what is the power of stay interviews, and why are they better, in my estimation, than engagement surveys and exit surveys? Not saying you shouldn't do those, but that you also have in your portfolio stay interviews. So, what's the power? First of all, they're personalized. While a survey focuses on groups, and gets group information, STAY interviews focuses on an individual employee and how to get to know them better, and again, to look at the 3 E's, their experience, their expectation, and their engagement. And this will help in retention. Second, they are action-oriented. Unlike exit interviews, which only identify problems, STAY interviews not only identify some potential drivers for the person to leave, but encourages problem solving and also to be able to take specific actions and steps with accountability, so that it's not just finding out as they're leaving, why they're leaving, but to nip it in the bud with these periodic STAY interviews to find out if there are any problems, if there are any dissatisfactions. That's going to lead them to at least take a recruiter's call, or to start looking on LinkedIn and Indeed and all the other websites that post jobs. And finally, and I think this is one of the best reasons, is they're inexpensive. You don't need a budget. It may cost a half hour or so of a manager's employee's time, maybe a couple times a year. And if STAY interviews prevents the loss of a valuable employee, you don't have the costs of recruitment and training of a new hire. And what they say is that the turnover of a valued employee can be 3 to 5 times that person's salary, and a high-level employee, one of your senior managers, it could be 10 times that. So, in other words, STAY interviews are just good business. So, therefore, finally, why should you use them? It leads to an increase in productivity of the employee. They know that they are being valued, and then it increases the loyalty of your employee, and also increases the results in terms of higher profitability and higher retention rate. So, today's agenda. What am I going to be covering today's agenda? Well, I already went over the whys of STAY interviews and what they are, and now I'm going to present you with a toolkit that's 5 components and guidelines to perform a STAY interview, to build a STAY plan, and then success factors. So let's start with the toolkit. And the toolkit is some guidelines. And what I find is, in talking with company leaders and managers who really believe STAY interviews are a great tool, and even HR folks, but many hesitate to incorporate it into their HR and management practices. And what I have found are 2 obstacles. One, not sure how to do them. Okay, and this, I think Human Resources has provided, whether it's seminars or workshops or resources on how to do performance reviews, how to do discipline, how to terminate, how to do all those things that are part of a manager's job, how to show recognition, but for many, they don't have a program of doing STAY interviews, and one of the reasons is because this is so new. So I'm going to give you a toolkit for that. And also, many managers are hesitant because they don't know how to handle complaints. They don't know how to handle when someone says, I want a promotion or I want a raise or whatever, and their hands are tied. How do you say that, but also encourage them? So those are the 2 reasons. They don't know how, and they don't know how to deal with complaints. So the toolkit that I'm going to provide you has 5 components. And it has to do with who gets interviewed, who is the interviewer, timing and frequency, what to cover, and follow-up action. Now, I'm going to go through each of these 5 components and give you more insight into each of them, and also talk about really, in the what to cover is where the meat is. And there are going to be 5 questions that I'm going to be focusing on that you, as the manager or as the leader, would be asking these 5 questions and how to deal and what kind of answers you're going to get from them, and then how to respond to them. So let's start with who gets interviewed. Is it everybody, or some? And there's what I say, it depends on, first of all, the size of the company. If it's a small company with 25 employees, then you may look at maybe we should interview all 25 if they are very valuable. If it's a size of 25,000, you can't do it with 25,000, so you need a smaller number that makes it easier for a manager to do. You don't want to overwhelm a manager on top of everything that they have to do on their plate to say, now you need to do stay interviews. But if you can make the case that stay interviews with your most valued employees, your top talent, why it is valuable and why should they take the time, and that it will not only engage them, but it'll prevent them from leaving. The second is the manager's responsibility. Is a manager responsible for 5 employees or 50 employees? If it's 5, that's pretty manageable for the manager to do 5 over a period of time, over a month or 2. Not saying you have to do them right after one another. If they have 50 or more employees that they're responsible for, then that is, again, probably overwhelming, and they will have to then determine who are the 3 to 5 or 7 or whomever that they want to do a stay interview. And the third issue to look at is in terms of all or some, is the talent pool. If there are positions in your organization that are hard to fill, and that it is important to retain those talents in those positions, then you should try to interview all of them if possible. It's one thing if you have a position that if the person leaves, there's 5 other people, 10 other people, 20 other people who could probably step in and do the job. But if that person has some unique talent, unique skill, unique experience, that if you lose them, you don't have it with, that unique talent or experience in your organization, you're going to have to go outside your organization, and everyone's competing for that specific talent or experience, then it makes sense for you to make sure that a manager does a stay interview with these hard-to-fill positions. So the focus is on your key employees, and do you know who they are? You need to identify who's vital for your success, and not just your executive team, but to also think about, beyond your executive team or your senior managers. Of course, they are important, but you also have to start thinking about what about your mid-level managers and mid-level or lower-level managers? What about your independent contributors? Some key people, like IT, for example, who know and understand your computer system, not one system, but many of your systems, and are great troubleshooters. They may not have the title of senior level manager or even middle manager, but yet you have to be cognizant. You lose them, you may be losing someone that is so valuable that's going to be hard to replace, or it's going to take time to replace, or take time to get them up to speed. What about your emerging leaders? These are the people that you should be looking at. Are you starting to groom them to take over some of the positions? If you are spending money and time and energy in providing them leadership development, then you also should be concerned about how well they're feeling engaged, what their experience is, and what their expectations are. So your emerging leaders, you should also look into, should we do some stay interviews? So that is the first. who gets interviewed. Now, the second is, who is the interviewer? And there are three possibilities. And I'm going to go through each one of them and whom I think is best. First, we can be looking at human resources. And they seem the logical people to do this. They do a lot of the interviewing, and you think it's in their wheelhouse. The problem is that they have a lot on their plate, and they may not see this as an immediate need, to put their time and energy in, because there's so many other things on their plate. And so HR may not be the best to do this because of their saying, I don't know why this is a priority for me. Second could be the external company that you use maybe to do engagement surveys. And yes, they know your company, they develop reports, and yes, they can do stay interviews. The problem is that they don't have the authority to implement changes. And they may do the stay interview, they may give you a report, but then they're gone. And who do they give the report to? They probably give it to the HR department. And now the HR department has, again, I have so many other things to do, I'm just going to put this report aside. So the third possibility is the person's manager. And that's why this is where I'm going to say if the ideal is for the person's manager to do the stay interviews. Why? Because the number one factor driving engagement is the kind of relationship employees have with their managers. And why managers? Another reason is that they have direct day-to-day contact, and they can have greater impact. There's a saying that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. With that day-to-day contact, they can be able, once they find out what the retention drivers are, they may be able to increase those retention drivers within their area of responsibility. Or if they find some turnover drivers, demotivators, they get that information immediately, and maybe they can start trying to minimize those turnover drivers. So it's not just that they have the day-to-day contact that makes them the best person to do stay interviews, but others say it as well. About the supervisors or managers' impact on engagement and retention. Here are some quotes. Gallup says, if you have a turnover problem, look first to your managers. Salary.com says, employees stay for managers first and coworkers second. That's interesting. Because common wisdom is you stay for your coworkers, and you can just tolerate your managers. Well, Salary.com did a lot of research on that, and now they're saying employees stay for managers. DDI, which is a human resource consulting firm, says employees' levels of engagement is higher when their supervisors had higher levels of engagement, which really says that it's not just your employees that you need to be concerned about and their engagement level, but what about your managers? And so stay interviews could be done all the way up the line. It's just not with your lower level employees, but also with your middle managers and maybe senior managers, because they have an impact, according to DDI, on the level of engagement of the people that are on their team or their department or in the business unit. And then National Education Association says when employees stay, it is because of their immediate supervisor. And so I wanted to give you enough reasons why it's important for the supervisor, the manager, to do the stay interviews and to be able to have them buy into this. So now we're going to go, we went to who do you interview, who does the interview, And now it's the timing and frequency. And I'm asked quite a bit, when do you do it? How often do you do it? Where do you do it? And I'll start answering those questions. So the best practices are, remember I said it's a structured conversation, not off the cuff, but it's structured. And the structure that I'm going to give you are the 5 questions you're going to ask and how to respond to them. But it's a structured conversation scheduled around 20 to 30 minutes. We're not talking, if the manager has been trained in this, knows the questions they're going to ask, and and are trained in how to do some active listening and how to respond, then it should not take more than 20 or 30 minutes. And whether you do it once or twice a year, I think it is better to do it at least twice a year. Quarterly would be great. That's the ideal. To quarterly, a manager will talk to, perhaps do a stay interview with hopefully 3 to 5, maybe 7 of his top talent. And if you do it quarterly, then you can reduce the amount of time that it will take. And also the idea is it's better to do it with new hires. Don't forget about new hires, and not to wait 6 months to do it, but the best practice is within the first 90 days. You want to know about your new hires' engagement, their experience, and their expectation. And I think this is an important group that gets left out, because when you think of top talent, you think of the people who are been with you for a couple of years, and you've relied on them, and they're doing great work, and they're part of your emerging leaders program. But think about your new hires as well. Because if you've paid good money for them and you've given them training, a lot of training, and they have to, then it takes time for them to get productive. And if they leave after 2 months or 4 months or whatever, then that's money down the drain. And finally, to spread it out quarterly. You don't have to feel you have to knock out all 3 or 5 or how many stay interviews that you need to do them in one day. In fact, I advise against that because you're going to be pretty tired. I've done, over my career, done lots of interviews, and especially when I was a caseworker many, many, many years ago, social worker, I had clients like every hour, and by the middle of the day, even though I wrote down certain things about the clients, I was getting a little dizzy between my first client and then the 6th or 7th client in the day. So I would say spread it out. Over time, you'll have more energy to do it, and it could be, depending on the number of people you have, it could be over a week or over 2 weeks. And also, don't think about this as something that you check off a list and forget, because I'm going to encourage you to do periodic follow-ups. So let's say you had a stay interview and you found out that the employee would like to take a course in XYZ, and the employee has researched that course. It's not offered in your company. The employee comes to you and says, here's the information, here's what it costs, here's why I think I need it, and you say, okay, let me look at my budget, let me see how we can make this happen, and then you forget about it. So you do need to follow up. So those are the best practices, 20 to 30 minutes, at least twice a year, ideally every quarter, spread it out over time, and do follow-up. So now we get into the meat, what to cover. This is a specific roadmap. It starts with how to initiate the conversation, 5 key questions you should ask, the kind of responses you get, and then how to build a stay plan. So, let's start with some helpful hints. First is the setting should be informal. Coffee, someplace, probably it could be in your office if you have a round table and you can just sit and chat and you've had other conversations in your office, or go down to a coffee shop and talk to them, or maybe a conference room. What is the norm in your organization? But you want it to be informal, and you want it to be also where people could feel open about talking with you, so that there's a certain amount of privacy there. Also, avoid distractions. The idea of turn off your cell phone, put it on vibrate, get away from your computer or whatever it is, and just really focus on that person. Also have time to do it. Don't feel rushed. If you're dealing with deadlines or crisis, even though you suggest, you set up a time, I would suggest rescheduling it, because you are not going to be fully there. You're going to be thinking about, oh, I have to call Mary, or I have to get back to that email, or whatever it is. I know for myself, I'm listening, but I'm also at times thinking about what I have to do after a conversation. So it's something that I have to work on, and I think I encourage everyone to work on, to pay full attention. And also that the conversation is not an appraisal. This is not a performance appraisal. That's why it's informal. It's not a big, that it's going to go into the employee's record or file, unless Human Resources wants to have some kind of report, which is fine. Because performance appraisals can be stressful, both for the employee and the manager. And it's really to say to them, the manager, I want to get to know you. I want to learn about you and your goals. So this is the second tip, is listen, not just hear. How many times have you felt where that you were not heard or understood? That the person was there, but wasn't really listening to you or didn't show that they cared. And we have to guard against this. That's why I say if they're going to avoid distractions, and if you're dealing with a crisis or a deadline, reschedule. Because what you really want to do is concentrate on that person, on what the person's saying, even their body language, and what you want to do is create a sense that the employee feels that my manager is really interested in me and just not going through the motions. And finally, to reinforce that the goal is to learn about their motivation and demotivation. You want to find out what excites them. Those are the stay factors. What frustrates them? Those are the potential turnover factors or triggers that they can leave. And, and the idea is, and tell them, I really want to know, I'm really interested in what motivates you, what engages you here, and what is it that frustrates you. And let's see if we can come to do some problem solving on how to increase that, to keep that motivation up, and maybe how to deal with some of those frustrations. So there's a 4-step interview process, and it's a roadmap, and it helps managers who say they don't know how to deal with it, or they don't know how to deal with what they've heard. So step 1 is, I'm going to give you 2 examples of how to start. What I encourage you is to put it into your own words so that you feel comfortable. This is verbiage that I've gotten from managers I've worked with on in coaching, and I said, okay, put it in your own words. So this is what one manager said to an employee when he started the stay interview. I would like to talk to you about how the job is going, so I, as your manager, can make this a great place to work. That's what one manager decided to say. Second manager made it a little more, not as brief, said, I would like to have an informal chat with you to ensure that the company and I understand what you really enjoy about your job and any factors that are frustrating you to the point where you might begin to consider other opportunities. And he emphasized the company and I, because the company was going through some issues about turnover, and they really felt that they need to do something, and that's why they started stay interviews, and that's why they brought me in to train their managers. And to get across that it's the company finds you a valuable employee and wants to know about you and your goals, the 3 E's, your experience, your expectation, and your engagement. So however, these are 2 examples. You may want to write your own. How are you going to start it? And then you move to asking those 5 key questions about their job, about their goals, suggestions, how to make this a great place to work, excuse me. You don't want them to live there. So a couple of hints that I'm going to tell you before we get into the 5 questions. First, I have questions and what are called probes, additional questions. Put them in your own words, okay? You can change the questions however you feel comfortable, but these are examples. Second, take notes of the key ideas because they're going to help you when you develop a stay plan. 3, you don't have to ask all 5 questions because of time or appropriateness, but at least 2 or 3 of them, and you have that option. And then, as I said, each question is followed by 2 similar questions to act as probes. So if the person doesn't quite get it, there's a different way to phrase it. And so let's look at the first question. What do you like most about your job? This sets the tone. It focuses on them. It focuses on the motivation drivers. And you need to pay attention because these can be your engagement and retention levers, okay? And, and then you can follow up if they're not quite sure about how to answer it. What parts are the most enjoyable? What do you look forward to when you come to work each day? And so, so that's the first question. What do you like most about your job? Then let's look at, to prepare you, what might you hear? And you'll hear different things. It depends on your workforce. I'm just going to give you 5 examples from managers I worked with, what they heard. Sometimes they say, what do you like about your job? I like the people I'm working with. We really get along as a team. Or I like the challenge of the job. I'm really learning on the job. Or I like flexibility, that I can work at home, that I can take a day or 2 off, whatever that is. Or that I know I'm making a difference. What I do is important. I realize that it impacts the team, and I know from how you've talked to me about my assignments that that it's helping meet the team's goals and it's helping to meet the company's goals. So that's why I know I'm making a difference. Or you could hear something totally at the other end. I enjoy coming to work because I can bring my dog to work. I've heard all of these 5, okay? You may hear others. Take notes. This is not, and if you need to find, tell me, you like the challenge of the job. Okay, what are some of the things that challenge you? You may want to go a little deeper to get a better understanding of what the person finds enjoyable. The next is, what do you like least about your job? And then follow-up questions, what parts are the least enjoyable? And I love this question. If you can change one thing about your job, what would it be? Now, you may find that some of your employees are hesitant to really say what they don't enjoy about their job. And so, you know, how you can address that, or how is to say something like, within all jobs, there are things we really enjoy, and there are things that we don't enjoy that cause us frustrations. If I know about some of those frustrations you have, perhaps we can together make some changes to make it more enjoyable. So here you're looking for demotivators, you're looking for triggers that they may leave. So what might you hear? A couple of things that you may hear. First of all is the everyday frustrations that hinder their effectiveness. They lack of timely information. Mary is supposed to send them a report by Tuesday at 3 o'clock, and they don't get the report until Wednesday at 5, and now they're behind. They can't get their report done in a timely manner, or that the work environment is too noisy, or that the software that they're using is too cumbersome and it takes too long. Or another thing that you may hear them say is they're feeling bored. They want more challenge. They want more development. You may hear this especially with the younger workers, because they're not wanting to wait 5 to 10 years to get really challenged. So you need to listen, take notes, probe a little more in terms of, you know, if you need further information, but you're just listening. You're not going to try to argue with them or debate them, and you're starting to think of, when you're hearing some of the demotivators, you know, how can I address this? So then now we're going to expand from the job or the team to the team or the company. And what are the retention drivers? Why are they staying? So, you know, why do you stay here? What keeps you working here? What is the best thing? This is a great question. What is the best thing about this team or company that motivates you to stay? And you'll be surprised that you'll hear different things. So what might you hear? And what are the top 5 reasons people stay? And these 5 has come up very frequently. These are the levers you can use for engagement and retention. So the first is the obvious. I would like, you know, what makes you stay? Because you have career opportunities here, or that I see that, that hopefully I can, you know, get promoted. And so sometimes they want promotions. Sometimes it could be other things, special projects, lateral moves. You don't always have to discuss with them, climbing the corporate ladder, but there are career opportunities beside, you know, and sometimes it's a lateral move, sometimes it's special assignments, things, and special projects. So be aware of what you have in your toolkit to be able to enhance the career opportunities, and that will be one of the reasons they'll stay. Another is compensation, and you need to do some research, because it's important that you have fair market, that your compensation, both in terms of salary and benefits, is fair and has market value. People won't leave just for money. But if you're not providing them career opportunities, for example, and some of these other factors, then now they may leave for a better job at the same pay or just a little hike. They're not. People are motivated to an extent by money, but if they feel that they're being paid fairly and you're providing them these other opportunities, we'll get into people management and growth and development and recognition, then they'll stay. Now, the next is the people management. And it has to do with the reputation of your managers and the reputation of your company, in your industry, in your community. And especially in smaller communities where there are 2 or 3 key employers, and it is considered a status thing to work for these employers because they're known as great places to work, and people want to work there. So what is your reputation as a company? And especially with millennials right now and younger workers, they're also looking at, does the company exhibit social and community responsibility? Do they have a great reputation? So that's number 3. Then number 4 is similar to the career opportunities, but it's more in terms of growth and development. How can I grow? How can I enhance my skill set? How can I be more valuable? And so what are the growth and development opportunities your company provides, whether internal, external? And again, this could be special projects, stretch assignments, things like that. And finally, recognition. How much recognition do you give to your employees? Now, some of you may say, why is that there? Why is that the top 5? And a lot of times we come from our own personal sense of, well, I'm not sure I need that. You know, I know I know I'm doing a good job. Why do I need recognition? Well, I'll tell you one short story because I think some people require more recognition or the sense that they're being valued and by their manager and by their company. So a number of years ago, I lived in a suburb of a major city, and they had for citizens police and fire academies. And I did both, and I'll just speak a little bit about the fire academy, where we learned what firefighters did. We went on rides with them. I saw the teamwork. And so one time I got to know some of the captains because I would go back to same station, and I said to the captain, I see tremendous teamwork here. Tell me about how you make that happen. And we got into the area of recognition. And one of the things he said to me has profound impact. He said, you know, Marcia, and this was an old-time firefighter. He said, you know, Marcia, I don't need a lot of recognition. I know I do a good job. I've been doing this a long time. I know inside myself I'm doing a great job, but I have people, he actually used men, but he had men and women who may need more recognition. And if they need 10 strokes, I give them 10 strokes because that's important to them. So I think you have to look at recognition and, again, get to know the people. Get to know your top talent, and they'll give you a sense of whether they're getting recognition or not. So what might you hear? Those are the things you might hear. And number 4 is what might tempt you to leave. And, you know, what is making you dissatisfied with this company? What might attract you to other companies? What do they have that we don't have? And pay close attention because you may not be aware of the turnover triggers for your company. So let's look at, and this is really interesting, what make you here? Here are the top reasons why people leave. And again, it's those 5. If you're not meeting their career opportunities, if you're not meeting their expectations around fair pay and market value, if you don't have a great reputation, whether it's the company or the managers, if there are limited growth and development opportunities, and if they're not getting the recognition or the company is not getting the recognition in the community for the work that's being done, these are your turnover drivers. And so you need to be aware of those. So now, you know, that's the 4th question. And the 5th question is, how can I help you be more successful? How can I support you in your career goals? What can I do to make your experience here better for you? And you may be tempted as a manager or supervisor to skip this because of the fear that you may hear, that they may want some totally unreasonable request, and you'll be surprised. Usually it's not. So it's important to be open and genuine about your interests and to listen to them and to also to make notes of them. So what might you hear? from when you ask the employee, how can I make you more successful? How can I support you in your career goals? So the person, may say they would like some more growth and challenge and exposure. And you talk about how can we do that? And they say, well, you attend a management meeting every week, and I would like to attend with you to get a better understanding of the department's challenges and to be more knowledgeable about my job. Now again, you have to evaluate that request. But would it be such a problem to bring that person as a guest to the management meeting? Again, assuming not confidential information is being discussed, but just general information, or maybe once that person has attended that meeting one or two times, have that person present your report or part of your report. Or they may ask for more feedback on performance. They say, I really want to know how I'm doing, and I don't want to wait for a performance appraisal. And as one employee said to me, I told my manager, I wish you would give it to me straight, what I'm doing well and what I'm not doing well. Don't beat around the bush. I really want to hear so I can work better. And so it can be simple things like that. And if they do ask for something that is out of your scope, not in your budget, I'll address that a little later, how you can answer that. But moving on, because of limited time, we're now going to say step 3 is to summarize what your key points are. You've asked those questions, whether it's 2 questions or 3 questions or 5, and you said, let me quickly look at my notes and let me review what I heard you say about the reasons you like it here, as well as the reasons why you may leave. Then let's develop a plan to make this a great place for you to work. And what you want to do is make sure that you're on the same page. I heard that what you like about the job are these couple factors, and what frustrates you are also these things. Is that correct? And, again, within reason, if they say, yeah, that's pretty well, we're pretty well what you've summarized, then you go on to a stay plan. But if they say that no, then you say, okay, can you clarify that for me? And once you have clarification, you then go to, let's start with a let's move on to a stay plan to make this a great place for you to continue working. And so now you're building the stay plan. And it really is, the goal is a list of actions that you as a manager and employee can take to enhance the stay factors and to decrease the leave factors. And, and so it's really looking at the action planning is based on your discussion. What are some of the ideas to increase your engagement? And the focus is to only to pick maybe 1 or 3 that can be implemented in 30 days or less. You want to deal with some low-hanging fruit. So if it's, wanting to attend a manager's meeting and the next meeting is next week, you can easily, okay, let's look at your calendar. Can you free up from 1 to 2 and accompany me to the manager's meeting? Then you want to have 1 or 2 that will take more time. That will, that you may have to say, for example, now I'm going to get examples of if they bring something out of your scope, how can you deal with this? So if they ask for an increase in salary or a promotion, and it's not feasible, then, for example, there's no budget for right now for an increase in salary. However, maybe you can find in your budget something that money to send them to a conference or give them the latest software. So you don't want to completely deflate them by saying, there's no way I can give you an increase in salary, but here are some other things that I can do right now within my budget to enhance your satisfaction. Or if they say, I see that there's a, I really would like to be promoted to this level, and you look at their, what that skill sets are, and they may not have the right skills or experience, then you say something to them like, let's figure out how you can get those skills and experience so that you would be a real viable candidate for that position when it comes up next. And so, you know, let's look at some training. Let's look at some special projects or stretch assignments so you can get that experience. So you want to focus on what you have control over, not in terms of your budget or your authority, and not what you don't. So I want to give you some examples of some of those actions that have come out of the STAY interviews and the STAY plan. So here, simple, register for a webinar to enhance their skills. Recognize their accomplishments with your boss. Be on a project team to work with other departments. Accompany you or present at a management meeting. Review in 3 months the request for promotion. That's some of the action steps that you can take. And you want to make sure that the STAY plan success factors, because now I'm going to be finishing up and going to Q&A. Couple of success factors. First, you want it to have action. You want it to be relevant and important to the employee. You want to focus first on low-hanging fruit, things that can be accomplished within 30 days or a week or two. You want to include actions management will take, and you want to include actions employees will take, because both are responsible. It's just not the employee sitting back and say, okay, manager, these are the things I want. You also, employees should have responsibilities. If they want to have further training in whatever, let them look at where can they get this training. Let them look at webinars. Let them look at, go to Compliance IQ's webinar and see to their website and what webinars they can take. And then you have to have it in writing with due dates, because this makes it real and it shows its importance and there's accountability. And again, the goal is to increase stay factors and decrease leave factors. And it doesn't end there, because now you want to make sure that you have follow-up. Maybe you want to schedule a meeting 2 weeks or a month from now. And the biggest mistakes that I see managers make is that they get all the actions, but they don't follow up with it. They'll say, I'll get back to you, but they never do. And so why follow-up is important? It sends a message to employees, the 3 messages. Number 1, you care. You've listened to them. You did what you say you're going to do. You said you were going to get information for them. You scheduled a meeting and a follow-up meeting, and you did. And it also says that the company has an interest in them. So I'm going to move quickly to the bottom line and then open it up for questions. I love this graphic. When you tune out, you lose out, and they move out. If you tune out from your talented employees, you will lose out and they will move out. And then real quickly, some action planning. Think about your next step. It's important that you take your learning what you're going to do once you get back. And just think to take and this can be a homework assignment, what 3 actions will you take to utilize what you learned about STAY interviews? And it can be, I'm going to set up a schedule, I'm going to talk to HR, whatever it is. And now it's time for questions. So we have about 5 minutes left for Q&A or even beyond that. Sarah, can you open up the lines and the chat box and see if there are